All right, bang. Today is Tuesday. It's May 9th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Here with Chief as always. Chief, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Feeling good.
Feeling good? Wearing a nice hat there?
Brand new hat.
Are they on sale?
They'll be on sale soon.
Okay.
Right now it's just for me. Maybe I'll get one for you. Maybe I'll get one for Big Cat, but right now it's just for me.
That'd be nice.
Friday 120, Cubs game. We got Cubs merch now.
I've never gotten you anything.
I mean, you did get me golf clubs like today. You hooked that one up. So thanks for that. I'll see if I can come through for you.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'll make a phone call.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
And we want to do something for you, the listener, and that is a nice HelloFresh discount.
Huge.
Yes, a nice HelloFresh discount. Listen, you guys all know about HelloFresh by now. I feel like they got to be one of the biggest podcasting advertisers going.
Podcasting, Instagram. I remember when I used to be huge into The Bachelor, and I would follow the different people that were on The Bachelor, Bachelorette on Instagram. It's like as soon as they were casted, they were getting the HelloFresh ads, and like the stuff always looks so delicious. It's good ingredients. It's easy. Everything's like portioned out for you, so it's great. It's a great product.
Yeah, and now they do more than just delicious dinners. Not only can you take your pick from 40 weekly recipes, but you can also choose over 100 items to round out your order, from snacks and easy lunches to desserts and pantry necessities, which is nice. It's a little shopping network now.
It's expansion. It's growing. Yeah, and everything is delivery. It just make everything so much easier. Makes it easier to be healthy. So yeah, HelloFresh is awesome.
Everything arrives in one box on a delivery day you choose. No more scouring the grocery stores for that one ingredient to complete your recipe. HelloFresh takes away all that hassle and delivers you exactly what you need, and helps cut down on food waste. So save money off your growing to-do list with the help of HelloFresh. HelloFresh is cheaper than grocery shopping and 25% cheaper than takeout. No worries if you're not a pro in the kitchen. HelloFresh's tool-proof recipes arrive pre-portioned and easy to prepare in a few steps. Go to HelloFresh.com/Chicago16 and use code Chicago16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. That is HelloFresh.com/Chicago16 and use code Chicago16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping.
60, that's a lot of dinners.
It's a lot of dinners.
It's a lot of dinners. I'm also a big believer that cooking is like an essential part of like running a household together. Like if you're in a relationship, like you guys need to be able to like cook together and eat
Figure
together.
it out. Yeah, for sure.
Better than just ordering takeout.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it.
Agreed. All right, today's topic, NATO.
NATO.
Better known as NATO.
Yeah.
A lot of people might be like, well, what do you mean? Like North Atlantic Treaty? Or like we know.
Yeah.
But that's what I kind of want to get to, because I feel like NATO, for a couple of reasons.
It's complicated.
Yes. One, I did see today is an anniversary. Mm-hmm. West Germany.
It's an important one, too.
Yeah, joining NATO.
Yeah. We'll
get into all that. And then obviously kind of what's going on with, Ukraine. So
it's all related back to NATO. It's a fascinating history, and it's like we talk about it now, and we'll get into it, but it's been an organization. So you said the West Germany was admitted in 1955 on this date. Well, it was actually formed in 1949, and it is nothing but a military alliance. So it was initially, I want to say it was 12 members. It was United States, Canada, Britain, France, Portugal, Norway, and a lot of these Western European countries post-World War II. So that was like when the Cold War was really starting, was basically, that was like the old quote from Patton. Have you ever seen the movie Patton, George C. Scott? If not, you should add it to your movie list.
I've seen our football coach always used to bring it in and show the speech. Yeah.
That's a fucking great speech. It's an all-time speech. Just gets up in front of that American flag. Like, Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. But anyways, I could do probably like, that speech is probably it's 8 minutes long. I could probably do like 4 of it from memory.
Peace within inches speech for you.
Yeah, it's closer. But I'm better at that, at the Patton speech than that one. Me and Cons can just do it back to back. I feel like we could help each other out. But that's what it was. So, the United States, like they basically, you had Nazi Germany, and they had expanded all the way almost to Moscow at their peak in the war, and had taken over all of France and Italy, and basically they had like the Fortress Europa, right? They had gone down through Belgium. Belgium was an original NATO member. Denmark was. And so when they were carving up Europe after World War II, that was like the Patton thing, where it was like, we're not done here. We got these communists. Soviet Union is a real problem, And we should do an episode on that because there's a lot of fishy stuff about his death. But Patton was like, you know what? We got all our troops over here. We got all our infrastructure over here. Like, give me a month and I'll start a war with the Soviets and make it look like it was their fault. And then he died in a car accident, like not too long after.
Oh, fuck.
So he's like a mysterious guy. But basically what happened was that they got, both sides get to Berlin and they carve up Germany. And the Americans had a quadrant of Germany. The English had a quadrant. The French had a quadrant. And the Soviets had a quadrant. And then the capital was Berlin. And they kind of, which was sitting in the Soviet part of Germany, the divided Germany. So they decided to, all right, well, we're going to split up the capital too, because it's not fair that you guys have the capital. So that was the agreement. Like they get half of Berlin. There's East and West Berlin and East and West Germany. And then in 1949, these Western powers, as the United States poured a ton of money into Europe it's called the Marshall Plan, but like it's probably like in the trillions. I don't have the number in front of me, to rebuild Europe. And that's because it was so decimated, war torn. Just, everyone's seen all the different World War II movies where these little like beautiful French towns and European towns just get blown to smithereens, whether it's Saving Private Ryan or whatever. So you have to rebuild all those bridges and railroads and infrastructures and houses and all that. And the United States used their financial muscle to rebuild Europe. And then through that purse, that's how basically call it the West and NATO was formed. And the biggest thing about NATO, and it's always referenced. It's referenced today. It's very relevant because of this Ukraine Russia situation, the war, is Article 5. And basically, Article 5 states that an attack on any NATO nation is an attack on all of NATO nations. So it's like if you want to slap around Denmark, okay, you want to invade Iceland or whoever, well, now you got to deal with the United States, Canada, Great Britain, France, and all the major powers. So that was always a thing, and it was like, all right, well, that's how the West is carving up Europe, and Russia didn't really, Soviets didn't really, Stalin didn't really care. Like he was rebuilding his own country, and it got to the point where there were other countries like Yugoslavia was communist. They had the entirely Eastern Bloc, so it was like unofficially part of the Soviet Union, but they called them satellite nations. It was Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, Czechoslovakia, all of those kind of Eastern Bloc countries were part of that Soviet sphere of influence, the satellite nations, and then obviously East Germany was part of that as well. And then you also had in Greece and Turkey, but primarily Greece. Greece went into a civil war that lasted from 46 until 49, and that was really pro-Western Greeks fighting against communists. So there's a very heavy communist, like they almost went communist, and then a little organization called the CIA got involved, and they started pouring money into Greece on the side of the people that were pro-Western, and defeated the communists. And then in 1952, NATO expanded for the first time, and it was to include the newly officially pro-Western Greeks and their neighbors, Turkey. They were admitted. And in 55, but again, like Stalin's like, all right, whatever, like just fucking end that war. Like, they had been committing some resources to it, but not really. And Yugoslavia's president was committing more to the communist side, but they just gave up. And then, so that was the first expansion. The next expansion was 55, which is one you referenced, was West Germany. And that was one where it's like, all right, like, what the fuck is going on? Now it's like we have a city that is inside of our borders with West Berlin, and if there's an attack on West Berlin, then we're at war, a nuclear war at that, because now it's like, the West has nukes and they're all right there, and it's like they had a big problem with that. And at that time, because it was still, they're doing the Marshall Plan, they're doing the rebuilding of Europe, and the war was, still there's occupied parts. We had the Allies had troops over there. The United States alone at this time had 400,000 troops stationed in Europe. So a big number. Like, you're ready for war right then.
Shit ton.
Shit ton. Okay. And that's just the United States. It's not counting France and England. So at that point, Soviet Union was, okay, like we need our own official team. Okay. We need and they came up with the Warsaw Pact. And the Warsaw Pact included the Soviet Union, 7 other countries. So I'll just read those off as Hungary, Romania, Poland, East Germany, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, and Albania. And Albania is right down there by like Greece and Turkey. And so that was it. So now you had like Europe divided into the 2 hemispheres. And then over time, because like the Cold War was running so hot, it's like a stupid way for me to say that, but it was like tensions were always very high. And you ever seen 13 Days?
No.
So 13 Days, I love it because it's about the Kennedys, okay? But it's really about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's Kevin Costner, who I also love. But it was the Cuban Missile Crisis was the closest we ever really got to a nuclear war. And the Soviets put nuclear warheads into Cuba. So then the thinking was, well, we can't, it's 90 miles from our shore. They could destroy every city in the United States with the push of a button. Like, cannot have that. So they go through like the whole UN. They, you guys have to get them out. They're doing spy planes, this and that, and get these things, get your missiles out of Cuba. And the reason things were so tense was because the Soviets had all their, they had servicemen installing these, their military installing these weapons, these nuclear missiles. So if we attacked the missile sites, hundreds, if not thousands, of Russians would be killed in Cuba. You can't just kill military personnel and expect nothing to happen. So the thinking was like that would set off a chain reaction. So we kill their guys in Cuba, they march on Berlin, and boom, that triggers Article 5 of the NATO agreement, and now it's World War III. And it's World War III with nuclear weapons, and it's right there. Okay, so it's like you're on the brink of like a global nuclear planetary destruction because the Russians was so. Long story short, the United States agreed to pull their missiles out of Turkey, but do it in 6 months, so it doesn't look like we're kowtowing. You guys pull your missiles out, and then the United States agrees never to invade Cuba, and everyone just shut the fuck up and try to get along. And that was basically what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's how it ended. But it was always running so hot that they were very careful about who gets admitted into NATO and when. So there was not another expansion of NATO until 1982 when Spain was admitted. So Portugal was already in. Spain had a dictator after World War II, this guy named Franco. Franco, lost his power, and Spain kind of rejoined the world, so to speak. So it made sense for them to join NATO. And then you fast forward and you get to the 90s, okay, 1990. It's clear that the Soviet Union is collapsing. They're out of money. Basically, it was like they got defeated by Ronald Reagan using the dollar. Pope John Paul II, and then the microchip. The microchip really changed the game. So we had computers, we had advanced weaponry, and it was the type of technology that the Russians and the Soviets just couldn't steal. So so it's like they couldn't catch up with the West because the West was just advancing too fast economically, militarily, everything, and they were getting squeezed. And that was kind of it. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1990, 1991, and the Berlin Wall fell. And there was like this supposed, not even supposed, it was like a verbal agreement between Gorbachev, who was the last premier of the Soviet Union, and George H.W. Bush. So Bush 41. And being like, hey, like NATO is not going to move east at all. Okay, so the Warsaw Pact is dissolved, but hey, don't worry about it. We're not going to pick up any of those countries. Is basically what he said. But there's never anything written down. There's no like actual formal treaty agreement, whatever. Yeltsin gets into power, and there's this for all these countries like Poland and Czechoslovakia and all these places that were really under the communist regime living terrible lives. They wanted to be in NATO. Well, there was like a lot of their population wanted to be a part of NATO. They wanted to be a part of the West. They, I used to work for a company that was based in Poland. So these guys who were like grew up under communism, they would talk about like the absolute best thing that you could get for Christmas. Be like, fuck, a pair of blue jeans, like something from, from America, from the West. It was like beyond your wildest dreams, or like a fresh orange.
Yeah.
Like getting like little things like that because they were so poor and it was so corrupt and it was like the worst thing to live under ever. So there, when the Soviet Union fell, you had this like wave of independence come, not just from like these satellite countries, but even places like Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, these countries that were they were genuinely a part of the Soviet Union. Like they broke off and formed their own thing. And then the West, the NATO nations were like, we actually we had that agreement with Gorbachev and the Soviet Union. Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. So that verbal agreement we gave to you guys, well, that was to somebody who doesn't even exist. So we can do whatever the fuck we want. And they kind of did. So they expanded all those 3 countries that I just listed off. They were admitted. There was like a big wave of new countries being admitted. So I'm going to pull up that list too, because I had that on a pretty good, just from the AP. So
Poland.
So Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all were allowed to join in 2004. So under George W. Bush, okay? And then there was Croatia and Albania became NATO members. So Albania was, Croatia was part of Yugoslavia formerly, and Albania was originally part of that original Warsaw 8. And a lot of these other former Yugoslavian nations, Montenegro, Macedonia, they all start joining. So now it's like they just keep inching closer and closer towards that Russian border. And if you're a Russian, and then in 1999, I skipped those ones, but Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, they joined NATO as well. And when you join NATO, it's not just like, hey, we have this agreement. It's, first of all the other NATO members have to unanimously agree to let you in. That's why Turkey, they've had trouble getting into the EU as well, because a lot of the European countries are like, we don't really want them. But this is a military alliance. How you run your military and how you organize your military, it's all kind of uniform. So it's like you can all go fight together. There's only been one time in history where that Article 5 was triggered, where all the NATO countries went to war. Do you know what it is? You were alive for it.
I was alive for it?
Mm-hmm.
So was it 9/11?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So you had NATO went after like Al Qaeda. That was the only time that ever really happened. That Article 5 was triggered. So you had the full alliance just raining down on Bin Laden and Al Qaeda and the Taliban for years and years and years and years. And so now you have like all these countries joining in. And during the 90s, remember that documentary we watched about the hockey team in Moscow in the 90s? It was fucking
Penguins, the Red Penguins?
Yeah, something like that. And it was like an insane story. It was because under Boris Yeltsin in the 90s, Russia became like a mafia state. It was all just organized crime. It was more corruption, and they were trying to, like, the West never treated them like they didn't really redo like that Marshall Plan. So in a theory, there's a theory that is out there. It's like, well, maybe if when the Soviet Union collapsed, the West kind of wrapped their arms around Russia, we wouldn't have these in like in a friendly way, like welcome them into like this, welcome back into the community of like the cool kids table. Yeah. Like, you guys, we're going to give you money. We're going to build your infrastructure. We're going to have business. We're going to help you guys set up. They didn't really do that. They're just like, all right, you guys, we're going to just inch towards your border. And that's become a thing too, because the reason that part of Europe is so important to them is because it's all flat. So like the Polish guys, going back to the guys we used to work with, they were always so paranoid about everything because their entire history is just people running over their borders and conquering them. So the Nazis, the Germans, Napoleon, like every generation has an instance of a foreign invader coming through because they have no natural borders. It's just basically fucking flat land from like Germany, where the Alps kind of stop, all the way to Moscow. It's just nothing but flat. So as long as you don't get yourself caught in winter, you can just run for hundreds and hundreds of miles at a time. So Russia is always like very scared of people invading them because of their history as well, because it's happened to them. And so they want to have like that neutral territory, like that buffer zone. And if they feel like the West and NATO is constantly like, all right, like Poland, now you're in, they're right on their border, Bulgaria, all these people, there is nothing stopping the West from taking over our country completely. And that's why when shit went to hell in Russia, they were embarrassed about the state of their country, and they were paranoid about the West going back against their word. And that's how you get a guy like Putin in power. So Putin took over in 1999, and he's been there basically ever since. And he had to step back for like one presidential term as he rewrote the Constitution. So he had like a yes man where he was like the number 2 guy for like 4 years. And ever since then, he's been like, kind of inching towards, like, they had the war in Georgia because Georgia was expressing interest in joining NATO in 2008. He said, oh, no. Then he said, like, hey, we have these breakaway counties basically of like South Ossetia and these different places, and he was going to support the rebels, the same thing he was doing in eastern Ukraine. And then, the West and Ukraine, supposedly it's like you never know what to believe or what's real, but supposedly they had, elected a guy who was democratically elected a guy favorable to Putin. And the West was like, no, we're not going to have that. So let's do the election again. And then they get in a guy who's favorable to them, and they start inching towards, like, hey, we want Ukraine. Like, hey, we want to join NATO. And that was just like a bridge too far for Putin. So Putin, starts this whole process, and he's an invasion. And now we have this invasion. And it's like, and I don't know where the end is, but it does, like, I wonder if people could go back in time, because it was a discussion point in the 90s, especially the early 90s. Maybe, why do we even have NATO? NATO was built and designed as a bulwark against communism. Communism's dead in Europe. So what do we need NATO for if we're not fighting the Soviets anymore? We should just disband it and just have like some other kind of agreement where you bring Russia in, some kind of umbrella where everybody is just peaceful and trading and there's no, animosity. But it was like they kind of just kept poking the bear, where, Bush 41 said, we're not really going to adhere to that agreement. And then Clinton came in and said, yeah, we're not getting rid of NATO and we're actually going to expand. And he had the first, the wave of expansion with Czech Republic, or I think it was still Czechoslovakia at that point. And Poland, I think Bulgaria. And then it was just like, okay, like now it's like we have like this real problem, and they just keep expanding, and Russia feels like threatened and choked off. And it's the same if you go all the way back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. We felt very threatened because we had nuclear missiles 90 miles off our shore. Well, they're in missile range of every country in NATO. So yeah. I can kind of understand it, but at the same time, we shouldn't really be so adversarial. Like I don't, and maybe it's easy for me to say, but I don't think Russia should be like, you'd have to be, it's like we have that, they call it mutually assured destruction. No one's gonna, like, if you invade Russia or you nuke Russia, they still have their own nukes. They'd nuke you right back and everybody dies. So that was really more than NATO, more than anything else. It was really just, we had nukes pointing at each other. Nobody wanted to start a nuclear war because that meant death for everybody on the planet. So I feel like that protection is still sort of in place, or still in place rather. So maybe Russia should care if all these countries join NATO, but that's, I don't know, easy for me to say as a guy sitting in this chair and not in Putin's chair. And but it's a very, I wonder if they could go back in time if they would do it differently.
So do you think it was a mistake going back on, like, is it seen as a big mistake going back on that handshake deal?
I don't know. I don't know if it's seen as that or not, but it's just me kind of talking out loud, but it does feel like there was an opportunity. Like if you had a 1991 version of the Marshall Plan where, you know, because there was a lot of communists in France. There was communists, if you watch the Peaky Blinders, there was a communist movement. It was just that in that period of time in the early 20th century, communism was seen as like a viable alternative to the way things were being done.
Yeah.
And so was fascism. Okay, there was a Nazi party in that held a rally in New York City. I want to say it was in the 30s. Sold out Madison Square Garden. Like,
yeah.
So that, like, these ideas that we think of now, because we ran the experiment on what those things look like communism and fascism, and we were like, oh, that's a terrible idea. Well, no one had really run the experiment 100 years ago, and things were a lot different. So people were like more open to the ideas, because you just look at capitalism as all the workers are getting crushed. There is still no like middle class. People are like wanted better pay. They see the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and Carnegies. They have this ungodly amount of wealth, and then you have the slums where, you know, the Irish immigrants and people are coming in living in squalor. They have one toilet for the entire building. And it was just like, people was like, this is really inequitable. Like, this is not right, not fair. We should have like a people's revolution. And then you get a people's revolution, actually takes place in Russia, and it's 1,000 times worse than anything that was happening here in the West under capitalism. So, but it's like nobody really knew that, because no one had ever tried communism. But communism, tried everywhere in the world forever, has failed and created death and destruction for millions and millions and millions of people.
Man, you just wonder what the world's going to look like. I mean, specifically over there, what it's going to be like when Putin's done.
Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen if he ever is done. Like, you were hearing reports like a while ago that he's got brain cancer, he's got MS, he's got all this other stuff, and then he just, I don't know, keeps ticking. But that, we talked about it a little bit on the Pick Six last week. That false flag thing was fucking scary, if that's what that was.
Dude, it had to be.
I agree.
I was talking to my buddy about it too. He went to West Point, and he went overseas, and he was, you know, very big in the war in Iraq, obviously. And he's like, dude, you don't, like, if they're gonna fucking go after him,
you go after.
Yeah, you're not gonna,
like, there should be a crater there.
yeah, dude, you're not gonna.
Not a flare.
And that's just his, obviously his.
But it's like, again, it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, it probably was a false flag, but also, when we're like, no, we didn't blow up that pipeline. Yes, we fucking did. Of course we did. Like, you know, so it's like everybody's lying. It is impossible to know what the truth is, or what anybody should do. I don't know what we should do about Ukraine. It feels like, and that there used to be reports that like, oh, like all these Russian soldiers are dying. There was a guy, I can't remember his name right now, but he went on Rogan, and he's like, you know, Russia always does this. They fuck up the first year, then they just throw bodies at it forever. And now there's reports that Ukraine is really struggling. Like, like a lot of their special force units decimated. It's like there's 7 Ukrainians killed for every 1 Russian. They're not making a dent in the Russian Air Force, like, at all. So it's I don't know if we're at the beginning or the end or what, but it feels like it's like a bad situation. It feels like there's no way out. Like, what would happen to Ukraine if we just stopped giving them all the equipment and money and all that stuff?
Yeah, I don't know. But also, if you're going back on what you just said, where it's like, well, they just want that buffer zone. Like, if they take say if they take Ukraine, then they're getting close to not having a buffer zone. Right?
Well, if they start moving west, you mean?
Yeah.
Like, well, they would see like, hey, Ukraine, you're the buffer. You know, like that's like, so it wouldn't even be Russian territory. It'd be like, you're going to be Ukraine again, but you're not going to be a westernized Ukraine. And I think that they would like that to be the case for Poland too, but it's too far gone for Poland. But like, Russia was weak in the 90s. You know, their economy was decimated, their military was decimated. They didn't have any real leadership at that point. So it's like, Poland wants to leave. Poland fucking hates the Russians. Polish people, in my experience, fucking hate the Russians. And the only people that they say are more corrupt than the Russians, again, personal experience, Ukrainians.
Really?
That's what the Polish people I used to work with say.
That's interesting.
And which is saying something because they were fucking corrupt. so it's like, you think we're corrupt? Well, let me tell you about the Russians. And if you think they're corrupt, let me tell you about the Ukrainians who are actually the worst. So, but again, that's, those are that's like a handful of Polish people, Polish nationals that I knew.
I do wonder how accurate that is as well, because it like wasn't the big thing that at the start of this war, like Russia got so exposed for what they really are.
Yeah.
And but like you said, if they are just throw
bodies at it forever, who knows? Yeah, it's
but that was a big thing, right? Like all their technology and all their tanks and stuff like hadn't really advanced since
the end of the war. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So.
But they're not losing any of their like heavy I know I saw their Navy and their Air Force is just like as good as ever.
Really?
Yeah. And they're, it's like, oh, we have all these sanctions on them, but now China's buying up a lot of their oil and their energy. So they still have positive money coming in. They're talking about forming that new currency. So they wouldn't be like shut out by like that SWIFT system. So like they're making moves. It just feels like there's no, I don't know what the end result is. It's kind of scary to think about because it feels like it can only, you would think that somebody would have brokered a peace deal by now because they've been fighting over the same stretch of lands for a long time.
Yeah.
But
we'll see.
Not the case.
Interesting stuff, though.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a fascinating history. I think I referenced like 3 movies that you need to watch today.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow, Fun Free Swim. We're joined by Anders Holm from Workaholics, and he's going to be in the new movie about my father. We get into that. It was
quite possibly the toughest Malort drinker I've ever seen.
Yes. It was a fun episode. So if you're a fan of his work, you'll enjoy it. And it's not like, it's an interview, but it's really just still the basic Wednesday
free
format.
Free swim.
I think Thursday we're going to do a classic movie watch as well.
What do you think?
You don't know this yet, but I think we should do Requiem for a Dream.
I'm a little scared about that movie.
I am too.
Okay. All right.
So we'll see. So that'll be
I might
Thursday.
like watch it in the morning.
Yeah.
Because watching it at night, the way that people talk about it might be too scary for me.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's on Tubi, which I guess is free with ads.
Yep.
People need to check it out, or you could buy it. Sorry, it's not a streaming service.
One of those ones where you just have to bite the bullet and pay the $3.99.
Yeah,
because I can't have like a Febreze commercial come in halfway through that movie.
Yeah.
If what I've been told about it is true.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate. Like I don't like to pick movies that are not on a streaming service, but this is one of those that's like kind of
got to do it.
Different circumstance. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. We will see you then.